We're trying to record. Can you walk somewhere else?
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
This is Brittany Haig from Thomas I Group in Atlanta, Georgia, and you're listening to Help Me with HIPAA podcast.
Thank you for that intro. I am David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs and Security First IT, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Cardin. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning, David. How are you?
I am tired and busy.
I know. I feel you, man. I feel you.
So you just got back from like doing a bunch of traveling and speaking, right?
Yeah, I was up in Chicago. Shout out to all my buddies up there. What's up? I had a great time, I had some busy time, but I did a webinar, a training class, a meeting, then a 3-hour half-day seminar, and ran to the airport only to find that my flight was delayed 3.5 hours. And thank you, Sky Club, for keeping me occupied.
Yeah, I try to keep you occupied a little bit.
Yeah. And then I did a training class here yesterday. So this week I am just like, I don't even know what I might say today. I don't know. It could be a combination of all those things we talked about this week because I talked about so many things.
Yeah, that's one of those times where you're like, I know I talked to somebody about this. I just don't know who and when and where. Somewhere we talked about this.
I know. Could somebody go find that person? Because I need them.
Yeah. But, today's topic is probably not something you covered in any of these.
I did. I had to talk about it all the time. Yeah, because questions came up because it's that time of year.
It is. It is the time of year to freak out about end of life.
Yes. End of life decisions for your computers.
Yeah.
It's sad.
So we have a few of those coming up in January, and that's going to be our topic for today, talking about Windows 7 in 2008 that is going to go bye-bye as far as Microsoft is concerned.
Well, you can still use them. Mm-hmm. They just don't care if you are and something goes wrong with it.
Yeah, which is not entirely different from some of our clients, right?
Yes, exactly. So, yes, we're going to talk about that. Yeehaw.
Cool. Yeehaw. But before we dive into that, I do want to go ahead and throw it out there that we are on Apple Podcast, so you can grab it there if you're not already listening from there. But make sure you share this episode out. And hey, we're still looking for podcast reviews. We haven't had one in a while. Even though listenership is growing, reviews are stagnant because it takes time and energy to do them. We know.
We understand.
But if you can do that, that would, we certainly are grateful of that. It's kind of like giving Donna peanuts when you do that. But we do want to talk about the boot camp because this is pretty much the end of the early bird pricing time frame.
Yeah,
so we have
your last couple of weeks here. So the HIPAA boot camp.com.
But yeah, go check that out. We've had several people already signed up, and seating is limited and going fast. Oh, and you got a couple of announcements to make too, right?
Well, we did get confirmation that we'll on the last day. I believe that would be Thursday.
Yeah.
So that I don't mess it up. On the last day, the way that we have the new structure, that's a workshop day, and we work with you on some of the things you've learned about, and then we end it talking about how an OCR investigation works. And as we did in the last boot camp, in this boot camp, we will be having an OCR investigator come in and spend a little bit of time, and we just do a Q&A and handle any questions you have. And she just kind of chats with us about how it works. So it gives you an opportunity, to hear it from them, from the proverbial horse's mouth. Don't tell Allison I said that. But anyway, yeah. So we have gotten the confirmation that that has been approved again, and it'll be on the last afternoon. So, a great way. We like to end it with the full terrify people at the thought of what an investigation involves. But, Allison's so sweet, it's hard to do that.
Yeah, it is. But it is nice hearing it from them in that, we're sitting back going, see, everything we told you was accurate.
Yeah. And we get to sit back and go, that's what we said.
Yeah. But it's funny, though, like everybody has these questions about these hypothetical companies and situations. Mm-hmm. It's so odd.
Yeah, I love it. And no one wants to really ask anything because they don't want to, they don't want to talk about who they're with or, if I knew somebody.
Yeah.
So we have to ask the questions. We have to ask the questions to get things going. And then people are okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If I happen to know somebody, and it's not my practice.
It's nobody I work with. So, yes, go to thehippobootcamp.com. The early bird pricing ends on October 5th. So, you want to get in, get it good, because that is where you'll get it for under $2,000.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd love to see you. And please remember, don't start asking us where the next one is and when the next one is, because we don't know. This is it till I don't know.
Yeah, I actually had an email the other day. The lady was, she said, is there any chance you're going to do one on the West Coast in 2020? Because I can make that. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah, we've got some ideas percolating on ways that we could do these big, out there, so to speak, and to bring in some vendor support and those kind of things. So we are percolating those things, but I can't even figure out when I can take a vacation in 2020. So there you have it. But thank you for caring whether or not we can come to the West Coast. And, if you build it, we will come.
Yeah.
All right. So thehippobootcamp.com or helpmewithhippo.com/bootcamp.
Yes. Go ahead and get in there and get registered. If you have a problem paying, just skip a house payment. There you go.
Oh, geez. So, you can get a link from the show notes straight to registration as well. So, bring it on. Let's get it done.
All right. Well, we're about to dive into some end of life stuff, and we're not talking about Donna here, but before we do that, let's hear from our sponsors. The number of medical practices that think they're HIPAA compliant is pretty staggering. Effective privacy and security are an ongoing process, not a checklist. And that's why at Cardin, they don't just assess your situation and leave you with a report, but they work with you all along the way. Call Cardin today at 678-292-5001 or visit them on the web at cardinhq.com. Aren't your patients worth it?
Are you frustrated with your current IT provider? Are you sure you're getting the security and protection you need? Are you putting your patients and your practice at risk? If you're in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, give Security First IT a call to learn more about how they can protect your patients, your practice, and your bottom line. Find them online at securityfirstit.com or call 980-288-5100.
All right, we're back. Let's talk about end of life for Windows 7 in 2008. And there's some other things too, but we'll get to that.
It gets more complicated.
I don't want to muddy the waters right out of the gate, but we've talked about it on and off. We've mentioned the end of life for Windows 7 and Server 2008 are coming in 2020, but we haven't focused an episode on what that really means and why it's important to listeners.
So we're doing that now.
So we are doing that now.
Well, and we've brought it up, several times around the beginning of the year and then off and on. You're right. We'll mention it, but as far as I know, the word has gotten out. But if you're dragging your feet, the last quarter, get it done. And remember, you have options, but you've got to figure them out. So let's talk about what this means. And especially if you've got Windows XP computers, listen up, because now those are even past the past. They're not even the most recent past, because we're getting to these. So what does this really mean? And here's the thing that we always get, and we still get it when we talk about Windows XP, is if it ain't broke, why am I having to fix it?
Yeah.
It's essentially it. If the computer's running, why am I having to fix it? Well, the thing is, only part of it would be running because the operating system is broken. You just don't know it. Yeah. So one of the things that I have started trying to use is a car. And it was funny in one of the sessions that I did. And they're like, why do I have to get rid of it? It's still working. I was like, do you drive a car forever? Yes, I do. Do you maintain it? Obviously I do, in order for it to live, to keep using it. Well, there you go, because you won't be able to get any parts for this anymore. Just think of it that way.
Yeah. Not only can you not get parts, but you can't even buy the fluids for it. Like
Exactly.
they won't make gas for it anymore, maybe.
That's essentially it, So people get it when you get a brand new car, you drive off the lot, you got the manufacturer's warranty, and let's say that you've got the Big Mac Daddy kind, covers 6 years, no matter what the mileage. It gets basic services free of charge. You get your oil change, your tire rotations, all of that. But of course, you've got to take the vehicle to the service department to get that done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that maintenance doesn't happen. Right?
Yeah. That's the painful part.
I know, right? I got to get by there.
Well, they do. We hear the same things. Like, how when you take your car in and you're like, oh, I just need to do my oil change, or I need my 10,000 mile service. And then the guy comes out and goes, oh, by the way, you this is wearing out. You need to replace this. This is going wrong. You're like, what are you talking about? It works fine.
Exactly. So those visits are your patching, your antivirus, all the stuff we talk about monitoring and making sure the computer stays up to date is when you don't have to go into the computer store. Back in the day, David ran a computer store where you would bring your computer and he would get it up to date for you. That was the day, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was way back in the day.
No. Let me take this card out and do some dip switches.
Yep.
Jumpers.
Yep. Jumpers and dip switches.
So, but that's what you do today, and if you don't take your car into the service department and get those things done, and the parts and the lubricants and the gas and all of that, I don't think a car will make it 6 years without service.
No.
Even if you got a warranty. The warranty is not going to cover that.
Just think of it this way. Like, they stopped making brake pads for your car. So when it runs out, you're going to crash.
Yeah. So your car, you maintain it, you keep it, all that kind of stuff. But after a certain amount of time, you're no longer able to get all the parts, and especially things like the safety features like brake pads and the new technology and warranty updates and all that stuff. You're just not able to get it anymore. Even though the car still runs, if you put gas in it, it runs. You may not be able to stop it.
It's not safe to use, but it runs.
Exactly.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. That's what a Windows XP computer is today. And on January 15th, that's what a Windows 7 computer will also be.
Yes.
An old car without brakes. There you go.
And like you said, it will still be usable, which is, kind of what people can't sometimes grasp. It's like, but you're telling me I got to replace it, but everything still runs. Yes, everything will still run. You just will not get any more access to updates because there won't be any. No updates, no security patches. So the longer you use it, the more vulnerable it's going to be. And software will stop running on it eventually. And people like me are going to say, I'm not going to protect you anymore as far as providing you any kind of assurances that you're protected, because even though we might be able to get our security software on there, you are consciously allowing the vulnerabilities to sit there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Your brakes aren't going, eventually your brakes are going to fail because you know that you're having to hit your brakes constantly to protect things. That's essentially what your software is having to do every single day.
Yeah. And in the South, we just ride around with tires on the front of our vehicles. Like literally on the bumper when your brakes aren't good.
Just in case.
You've seen those, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So you might be a redneck, but the bigger picture is understanding that those devices are now a danger to all the computers around them. Just like you have to put that tire on the car because it's a danger to all the things around it. And having those devices sitting out there and saying, well, it works, I'm not going to worry about it, is really dangerous to all of the other devices on your network. And it's unfortunate. Yes, I know. But do you know when this operating system was released? I mean, come on. What do you expect out of software? What was it? October 2009, October 22nd, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So over 10 years, they have maintained something that you are beating the crap out of nonstop. Because what people do to their computers is like they're running that computer like sitting in rush hour traffic nonstop 24/7. The stop and go traffic that brutalizes your brakes and all of the. So that's essentially what you're doing to the computer 24/7, 365, the whole time you have it.
Mm-hmm. Well, another thing that throws people off is they bought a computer, 2 years ago when Windows 10 was out, but there was the option to downgrade to Windows 7. And so they would buy it. It's got Windows 7 already on it, or they downgraded to it, whatever. And they're thinking, dude, this computer's only 2 years old and you're telling me it's out of date. And the computer itself is okay in those situations. It's the operating system that needs to be upgraded. And if you happen to buy one during that time frame, you might still be able to upgrade to Windows 10 with no additional cost if that's one of the computers you bought like that.
Yes. And they now have it, because for a long time you could upgrade to Windows 10 for free. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was like a long time they had that. And now I think if you have an Office 365 subscription, it comes with a Windows 10 upgrade.
Yeah. IT people are going to hate me for saying this, but there are some ways around that still.
Yes, there are. Yes.
But I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Those free copies existed. So the important thing to know is, yes, the computer may be new, but if you're running the old operating system, you got to upgrade it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that you don't have to replace the whole computer, but you do have to upgrade the operating system in order for you to continue to get brake pads.
Right.
There you go.
And then you just got to make a business decision about which way is the best way to go. Because if you have a computer that's already 4 years old and you're looking at spending money to upgrade the operating system, it probably doesn't make sense to do that at this point.
We're not talking about something that takes 2 minutes and you click a few things and you're upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
Because, sometimes things go awry and there's different parts and, different levels of software and there's so many variables. Every computer's different.
Yeah, and you could do an in place upgrade, meaning you're going to upgrade from 7 to 10 without reinstalling anything, and it can break other applications, and so you have to keep that in mind.
Right. So don't go into that thinking. So David, when you go in, how long do you expect it would take to upgrade a computer from 7 to 10 like that?
Well, I mean, if we don't run into any problems, a couple of hours.
Yeah. If nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, but that's still highly dependent on the internet connection, because it has to download a bunch of stuff, and then the speed of the computer itself, because it's doing the upgrade. So there's a lot involved in it, but it's going to take at least a couple of hours, and oftentimes we find that after the couple of hour install, it'll also do an update, and the update can sometimes take a long time. We had one recently. It was a brand new system, and the first time, like 2 days, for 2 days, we had it up and running, doing our setups and stuff on there. So the first time I went to reboot it, it decided to do a Windows update.
Oh,
and I finally just left it after an hour and a half of seeing the screen that says, "Don't shut this computer down." So yeah. I don't know how long it took, but for over an hour and a half, it was at that screen. And I finally just said, well, I have to pick this back up, tomorrow.
Well, that's what I just assume. Until it's finished doing Windows updates, I assume that I'm not going to be able to do anything else with it. So I just keep rebooting it until it's done and checking updates and doing this. So know that, just as David mentioned, that you're going to invest money and resources in upgrading these devices in most cases. Now, some are going to go through with no big deal. That will happen. But we wouldn't plan for that.
Mm-mm.
So how much you can get, if you've got an older desktop computer sitting there, you can replace that for so little money compared to you could definitely replace it with a new desktop running Windows 10 for less than it would cost for one of David's technicians to spend 2 hours on the device.
Yeah, you can. And it's dependent on what you're buying and all that, but you do need to think about whether or not it makes sense to do that. And one of the problems we still run into is people oftentimes will still say, my computer's only 5 years old. And I'm like, what do you mean only 5 years old?
Do you know how old that is in computer years?
and I don't know. I guess there was a time maybe when people just got more life out of their systems. But I don't know where that comes from.
Well, they also cost $2,000 then.
That's very true. And that may be where the problem comes in. People just have this thought process that, it's only 5 years old and everything still works on it.
Yeah. Well, here's the rule, particularly with Windows computers and the way that we do back when we ran an MSP, which we do not anymore, but we would go in and do our annual technology plan and say, okay, you've got this many devices you got to worry about. At 3 years, it should be moved to minimal processing, accountability, meaning it could go down at any time and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to give it a low paying job.
Mm-hmm.
So that, it's a pawn at that point. I'm going to keep it up to date and I'm going to do this, but I'm going to bring in new equipment to replace those. If I've got a 5-year-old computer, it needs to, you need to expect that to die any day now. And you may not even want to be, just have it sitting over there when you need to do something quick, or go ahead and get rid of it, recycle it, clear it, get it out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And servers last a little longer. But it depends on how you buy them too. Because David and I buy high-end computers to start with. Just go ahead and buy the high-end ones. They're on my desk. I use them, and then they filter down to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I tell people. They need to, buy the high-end for the high-end users. And then when it gets to 3 years for them, move those down. Just clean them up and move those down, and you move out the ones you're replacing as they're hand-me-downs, I know, but they're going to be a brand new computer to somebody else.
Yeah. And it is important to have a plan to do that, because we we're actually running into that now with a brand new client where during the onboarding process, the owner of the company says, I want to have a plan for replacing these computers on a schedule so I'm not hit with a big cost at one time. And I looked at the person and I said, that's advisable. The bad thing is that all 40 of your computers need to be replaced now.
Yeah. If you're constantly replacing, you don't run into that.
Right.
So you figure out, when something hits 3 years old, that's the time to, move it down the food chain, bring in a new one at the upper end of the food chain. But that's how you'll make them last longer. Also, when you buy the low end cheap ones, when you got a bunch you got to buy, you're expanding, whatever, go ahead and do that. But just know you're going to keep passing them down into those areas. Yeah.
And if you do buy the cheap ones, if you're buying a $400 brand new computer, then, you're not buying a good one. And it's not going to last as long as far as usefulness as you want it to. Spend a couple $100 more.
Issues, those kind of things.
Right.
But that should be part of your annual technology plan. And it should have been, this year's technology plan and last year's technology plan. And those are things that we live in a world. If you can live without technology at all, then you don't need a technology plan.
Yeah.
But if you cannot live without technology at all, you should have a regular plan of what's going to be replaced, what's going to be upgraded, and don't stop at just Windows 7, Windows 2008. Because as David has learned, he has somebody with Windows Small Business Server 2011. And what have you learned, David?
Well, 2011 is a interesting animal. So when you try to look up, Windows Small Business Server 2011 end of life happened, Microsoft just tells you, well, it depends on the individual components of 2011, which, leaves you kind of scratching your head.
You're like,
what does that mean? What does that mean? So what that means is that 2011 was Microsoft's way of taking the operating system of 2008 and then Exchange Server 2010 and putting them together and calling them a different animal.
But it's still Server 2008.
It's still Server 2008 underneath it all. So for those people who have, you're seeing all the warnings about you need to upgrade your server on 2008, and you're going, well, I got 2011, I'm good. No.
It's a little tricky. Yeah. And here's the other thing, and we were talking about this earlier. We won't go into the deep dive of how bad it is, but there are devices that, you're going to be told you can't upgrade to Windows 10 or server anything beyond 2008 because XYZ won't work.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to upgrade XYZ.
Yes.
So now what are you going to do, David?
You're going to make a business decision.
It is a business decision. And I've said that a lot this week. That would be a policy and business decision. But, that's when you can get with IT and you're going to have to invest in order to keep the old stuff. You're going to have to invest in a security risk analysis to figure out all the things that could go wrong. What data is on those devices? What do they need to have access to? And you should, at a minimum, segment them in their own special, network. And if your tech people don't know about segmentation,
find you a new one.
Yeah, really. You need a new one. So in today's world, it's some people even think that every single computer should be its own segmented. No, it's zero trust. I don't trust any other computer.
Yeah, I think it should. I think it's going to come to that, but we're not there yet.
Well, at least on the smaller networks, like, in a small business, and we're generally talking with small business. Enterprise even has to see some of their remote offices as functions like a small business. It's harder for them because they don't know how those networks work. But, you have to have a plan that is clearly documented. You've evaluated it and you've said, this is how we think we can protect all our other computers from these sad little puppies that we can't do something with.
Mm-hmm.
And protect anybody that connects to our network or that we connect to.
Right. And I would go ahead and probably prepare you for some pushback from your IT people, especially if you're outsourced IT.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to come in and they're going to probably want you to sign some kind of release if you decide not to change these things out, or they're going to. There's a number of things they may do. Like for us, we don't draw a hard line in the sand on stuff like this. It just kind of depends. But what we will do though is we'll say things. For example, if it's slightly outside of the end of life period, then we will go up on the pricing to support it, because now the support time is going to take longer the longer you have those things, and the computers are running slower. There's no security patches and all these other things, so that it makes the complexity of our job bigger, so your invoice gets bigger.
Well, yeah, I mean, you pay me now or pay me later.
Right. And so, you're thinking, well, I'm going to push this decision out another year to try to save money. Well, it's really not going to save you money, because your invoice is going to go up to support these things. You're actually going to be better off replacing them rather than trying to save money on them. And so we use that to put pressure on the client a little bit, but we also use it because we do have to spend more time supporting those things, because they do, as time goes on, they get more complicated. Now, we don't do that, on January 15th, your invoice is going to go up. But, we do revisit that when it's time for, the contract renewal. And some IT companies are going to tell you, look, you're going to be within the support date range of your operating system, or we're not going to support it. Or, some people are going to say, we're going to question whether or not we want to do business with you if you're not going to do this. So there's all kind of pushback you may get from IT. So just understand that can happen.
Well, and it's about their liability.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's not, no, some folks are just like, they want to do the easiest thing possible, granted. And, if you're in a situation where, we've run into this with XP, we'll continue to run into it with Windows 7. I'm already hearing about it, that, we're trying to deal with this. And if you upgrade that to Windows 10, then that medical device will no longer work with it, period. And we're not going to give you anything. So these medical device vendors are refusing to allow you to secure their systems. They only want you to buy another new medical device, and pressure should be on them. Unfortunately, they don't fall under HIPAA in most cases. They fall under the FDA, and the FDA has tried to put pressure on them that they maintain security on these devices. But where it stands right now, those older devices, they can't go back and try to push those. And, they're just like, it won't work. It makes me want to, switch out the computer and see if it would. I'm not saying you, but I'm saying, it does make me want to do that. It is a little tricky, and they may not help you do that, but it does make me wonder if it really would work. And the only way to do that safely is, a complete bare metal type backup, or just switch it out with another computer and load the software, see what happens. But at any rate, you have to worry about those cases happening, and you do need your IT vendor to understand and work with you on that. They shouldn't just say, well, go buy another $30,000 piece of equipment. I don't support it in the first place. I don't do anything with it, blah, blah, blah. You want them to segment those off.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had all kinds of tech people, the I got a guy tech screaming and yelling at me, this won't work. What you can't do. I was like, get a new firewall, make a new network, even a tiny one, something so that you can control the traffic going from and to those devices. Oh, that's what we're talking about, is something. Yes, it can be way more complicated, but you need to know that you've got there are options, but you've got to do that security risk analysis, and you've got to write it all up, and you've got to show it, and you've got to add new monitors in place. those kind of things to make sure that it's working and that somebody is watching for things being out in the wild, as they say, which is what we talked about. You mentioned it as a key element in the things to expect from IT.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of them, staying on top of things.
Yeah. And, we don't have this in our notes necessarily, but there are also other software that you need to be aware of that also has ends of life. Like if you're running Microsoft Office, there are Office versions that are coming up end of life as well.
Mm-hmm.
So those things too. Any software you're running on your computer has vulnerabilities. Every single one of them has vulnerabilities, and they all have updates and patches that come out for these things. And so just watching for Windows updates and Windows end of life is just the start. Every single thing you run on your computer has the same issue.
Yeah, your annual technology plan should include a review of what's happening with the software that you're using.
Yep.
All of it.
And that's why you want to do, an annual security risk assessment, or at least a mini risk assessments or something around that technology, so that you're understanding what is out there and what may be coming up. Because that way it won't sneak up on you. Because if you're just now thinking about Windows 7 or Server 2008, then it snuck up on you.
Well, no, it snuck up on you if you're not thinking about it till February. So.
Right.
It didn't sneak up on you. It ran over you and kept.
Yeah. So go ahead and think about that. Now, Windows 10 is a bit of a different animal, because they're saying that they're going to try to make this thing last a lot longer in how they update it. But all of your other software, any line of business application, you should go ahead and start looking at, when is this thing going to stop being supported, and have that on some kind of calendar so it doesn't sneak up on you, and you're able to make these decisions, a year in advance, or at least have a plan on how you're going to deal with it.
Years in advance. No going in, because that should be also part of your risk management plan, is to sit down and review these things periodically. And, that's why when we do our assessments and we're like, okay, we need to look at all of the equipment you have, and we need to look at all of your software. Well, that's a huge list.
Mm-hmm.
I know. And we need it for these things. So, for example, Office 2010, its end of life date, note to self, is October 13th, 2020. Now, there's 2 points I would like to make here. If you're using something earlier than Office 2010, hello, it's already gone. And the number one way that they distribute malware is almost always, every time anybody looks, is a Microsoft Office file. Spreadsheet, PowerPoint, mostly docs, Word documents, and spreadsheets. But that's the number one way they're distributed for a reason. So I just had to get that in there. So go ahead and get that on your plan if you don't already have it. Most people are converting to Office 365 where you don't have to deal with that anymore. But then they're like, but then I got to pay every month. I know.
Yeah, but it's not bad. It's depending on which version of Office you buy. It can take 2 years or better before you hit the same ROI. So, what it would cost for you to do it every single month is going to be equivalent to what you would pay up front in a 2-year price tag. So it's not a bad deal.
Yeah. And it handles a whole lot more stuff than just what you can do on an individual machine. You got to remember, Office came out back in the day. The thing that made a PC attractive for real business use for the first time, it got it out of the garage or the basement, was a spreadsheet. I believe VisiCalc. And accountants loved it. And that's what started moving PCs into the business world. So keep that in mind, that's where Office started, and it was built around each individual machine was an island unto itself. So that standalone Office application goes back to those good old days.
Mm-hmm.
So there you have it, though. You've got to sit down and review these things and have a plan. And if you can't upgrade the machine or replace the machine, then you have to have a plan for how you're going to secure things. Period. End of statement. And let me just point out before we even get there that shortly after Windows XP end of life, there was a settlement where a organization had a Windows XP computer with a known vulnerability that caused them to have a data breach. And that was part of the reason that they ended up with a settlement is, that whole, they are going to try to make an example out of you if it's just obvious. So just saying, it's that obvious.
Yeah.
So have a plan. That's really all you need to do is have a plan and understand what your risks are and deal with them.
Well, I have to question any business that ignores these things but at the same time, on the other side of their mouth, they're saying we care about our patients.
Mm-hmm.
Because, all of what we're talking about, even though we're talking about computers and technology, it really boils down to protecting the data, which is patient data.
Well, in the world we live in today, it's not just about patients anymore. It's your customer.
Mm-hmm.
No matter who your customer is, you need to do these things to protect your customer. Whether that's a patient, a resident, a long-term care facility, or your clients if you're a business associate, or your clients if you're in mental health, or whatever you call your customer, the data that you have about them or that you process on their behalf, that is what we're talking about protecting. And in the world we live in today, you can't care about your customers if you're not protecting them electronically.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, David. You're right.
Of course.
I know how that makes you feel so good to have a day where somebody says that. And so
starting out
check,
on a good
it's
foot.
done. It's done.
Yeah, it's the problem we're going to run into as things progress is that we're eventually going to have a federal, data mandate to protect this stuff. And you're going to have to be able to prove as a business what you were doing was reasonable and appropriate to protect the data. And when something happens, how are you going to prove that? And so all of these things we're talking about is documenting what you're doing, why you're doing it, why you made those decisions, so that when something happens, you will have some leg to stand on, hopefully, or you will not have a leg to stand on. As Donna likes to mention, the person who said, well, if I document it, then they'll see that I'm not doing it.
I'll never forget. You don't even know what to say to that.
So don't be that person.
Yeah. So we know that. And yes, the reason this has to happen is we're collecting more data now than we ever did before. There's more data being collected, used, and stored. And if you go back and look at before the computers were everywhere, it was all on paper and nobody was going to be able to keep up with all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
Famous last words. All right, that's our show today, folks. Remember to follow us and share us out on your favorite social media, rate our podcasting app, spread the word. We need it. And remember, for Donna and myself, the HIPAA in Windows 7 is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.